Ultimate Guide to the Roswell UFO Crash is a book by Noe Torres that takes readers on a tour of more than 35 places in and around Roswell, New Mexico that are believed to have been involved in the so-called Roswell incident, a UFO crash that occurred in 1947. The book visits each of these places, gives witness testimony, provides more than 100 photographs. Here now is just one of the locations mentioned in the book, the former residence of Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer for the Roswell Army Airfield. In the early morning hours of July 8, 1947, Jesse Marcel Jr., age 11, was asleep in his bedroom at 1300 West 7th Street in Roswell, New Mexico, when his father suddenly came into his room and excitedly told him to follow him into the kitchen to look at something very strange. What Major Jesse Marcel Sr. was about to show his young son on that quiet summer evening would change both their lives forever. After the two walked through the quiet house in eager anticipation, the elder Marcel spread out on the kitchen table a box full of metallic debris like neither had ever seen before. The material collected by the elder Marcel earlier in the day at the Foster Ranch north of town included metal foil, broken pieces of a plastic-like material, and metal beams, or I-beams. The foil had a more or less dull appearance, kind of a burnished aluminum surface, not shiny or highly reflective, although one side may have been more polished than the other, Jesse Marcel Jr. wrote in his book, The Roswell Legacy. The surface of the foil itself was somewhat smooth. The pieces themselves didn't have any distinct design or shape. They were amorphous. I remember looking at some of the foil material for quite a while. In particular, I remember how light it was. If you dropped it, it would float like a feather. When Major Marcel later examined the material back at the Roswell Army Airfield, he noticed that when he bent or folded a piece of the strange metal, it would immediately straighten itself and return to its original shape, a property that caused UFO researchers to refer to it as memory metal. Additionally, attempts to dent or deform some of the larger pieces of the debris using a sledgehammer were unsuccessful, which meant that some of the pieces were virtually indestructible. But perhaps the strangest thing witnessed at the Marcel residence that night in 1947 was a group of strange hieroglyphic-like symbols on one of the pieces of the debris. In the Roswell Legacy, Marcel Jr. remembered, there were about 30 symbols, one right after another. These symbols were solid. They were not line drawings. One reminded me of a seal balancing a ball in its nose. The symbol was like a truncated pyramid with a solid ball over the apex. The symbol located just to the right of this was an oblate spheroid. The spheroid sometimes would appear with two smaller spheroids below the larger spheroid, sometimes above. As I recall, the next symbol had the same configuration, but it was reversed 90 degrees. To the right of these symbols was a simple oval. After the impromptu viewing of the flying saucer crash debris, Major Marcel gathered up all the material and took it with him back to the base. As it turned out, he later accompanied some of the material collected from the Foster Ranch as it was flown to Wright Airfield at Dayton, Ohio, aboard a military cargo plane. When my dad returned to Roswell from Dayton, Ohio, he cautioned my mother and me never to tell others what we had seen that night. In talking with him later, he confirmed that this material was from an unearthly craft, and I was certainly convinced of it myself. Contrary to what some people believe, the Marcel residence was never ransacked or even searched by military officials looking for pieces of the Foster Ranch debris that may have been left behind. Jesse Marcel Jr. said, "No, I don't recall any military people coming to the house after that night. I think that my dad, as being the intelligence officer for the 509th, had enough credibility that they felt there was no need to come to the house and look for any spare parts. I can safely say that no one from the military ever came at any time to look around." Today, as we stand outside the former residence of the Marcels on West 7th Street in Roswell, we can only imagine what it must have been like during that moment forever frozen in time, when the tiny kitchen table of the house held fragments of what may have been a spacecraft from beyond the Earth. In our mind's eye, we can see 11-year-old Jesse Marcel Jr. holding the wreckage in his hands and wondering about humanity's place in the universe. From that evening on, my life took on a different meaning, he wrote in the Roswell Legacy. I could never look at the night sky the same way again, because, for all I knew, someone else might be looking back. The former Marcel residence is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of West 7th and Montana Avenue. Across the street to the north is an empty lot, which was there in 1947. Jesse Marcel Jr. remembers playing in that empty lot with neighborhood friends. Johnny Peck, Gail Selly, and I played war games and rode our bicycles on that lot, Marcel said. His friend Johnny Peck lived in the house just north of the vacant lot. When visiting the former Marcel residence in Roswell, please respect the privacy and property of the home's current occupants. This excerpt is from Ultimate Guide to the Roswell UFO Crash, a new book by Noe Torres. To purchase the book or for more information, visit roswellbooks.com.